Hello and welcome back to a session with Dr. James Gauss. He's a noted scholar. He has a new book that we're discussing today called Embracing the Antichrist, the Heresy of Interfaith Dialogue. His new book can be found at Amazon.com. You can find his other works there as well. Search for Dr. James F. Gauss. You'll find his titles such as Islam and Christianity, A Revealing Contrast, and his seminal work it's called Understanding Islam in the Light of Christianity, which really is a primer for all pastors and youths who are considering becoming involved with the so-called interfaith dialogue movement. And Dr. Gauss, we've been so privileged to have you as a local scholar in Minnesota, someone who's done a wide variety of events all around the region. We're coming along today to discuss your new book, Dr. Gauss.
Well, thank you for having me, Wes. It's a pleasure being with you today.
With your new book on, you're really going directly to the heart of interfaith dialogue with Muslims and Islamists. Can I ask you a few questions about your book, or is there something that you might have on your heart or mind that you'd want to begin with today?
Well, we can start with your questions and we can fill in from there.
Yeah, well, there are just these reports that we hear repeatedly. We're hearing these reports that there are hundreds of thousands of Islamists in Muslim countries and Islamic republics, and that they are turning to faith in Christ, but not in America. Why is that? Do you have any thoughts on why they're not converting to Christianity in America?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's addressed in some part with Pew Research Center that came out with a couple of polls in 2018, and they discovered that 77% of the Muslims in America that are converts from Americans in the U.S., these people were raised in Christian homes. So 77% of Muslims converts in the U.S. come from Christian homes. The other polls showed that when Muslims leave Islam in America, only 22% of them become Christians. So that's an indication to me that there's a failure or a disconnect, particularly in the church, in terms of witnessing the truth to Muslims or potential Muslim converts. In the Middle East, where in Iran, literally hundreds of thousands of Iranians are coming to Christ despite the great oppression there and the outlawing of Christianity. They're doing it through dreams and visions, but also through satellite broadcasts that come into Iran from many Iranian ministries that are based in the U.S. And through that, they're establishing home churches and Bible studies and so forth, it's become so prolific in Iran in particular that the Ayatollahs are beside themselves. They can't shut it down. The more they try to shut it down, the more it spreads. I should also mention, too, that Iran, I don't know if you remember, years ago, there was a ministry started, intercession ministry called the 1040 Window, where they encourage people to pray for countries in the 1040 window, which was the meridian lines. And, that's been going on for decades. And I certainly believe that God is answering those prayers and intercessions, which would include much of the Muslim world.
Tremendous. With interfaith dialogue becoming so popular in the United States in some of the, milquetoast sects of Christianity, interfaith dialogue with Islamists is a growing outreach for many Christian denominations and churches. How did it get started, and where did it come from?
Well, many think that it was initiated by the church itself, the interfaith dialogue, but in reality, it started about 30 years ago when the Muslims themselves, particularly the Muslim Brotherhood, produced a document called an explanatory memorandum It was hidden for many years, but was discovered in 2004 due to a search of a home of an individual that was affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. And what this document says, if I can just read it in part, it says, our work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their own hands and the hands of believers, meaning the Muslim believers, so that it is eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all other religions. It is a Muslim's destiny to perform this type of jihad. And so that was laying the groundwork for Muslim Brotherhood to infiltrate the church. And they've done this in numerous ways by telling the church members that we all worship the same God, we're all in Abrahamic faith, we all have the same family ideals and peace and so forth. And all these misleading and deceptions that have drawn in the church and many denominations to come alongside this jihadist Muslim ideology.
And it is astonishing that the misinformation and disinformation can be so extreme that some of the pastors, the clergy, the lay people come to believe that Islam actually predated Christianity. They screw up the timeline in the minds of the...
Exactly. In fact, if you listen to Muslim imams and Muslim scholars, they claim that Jesus was a Muslim jihadist, that also Abraham was, and all the way back to Adam and Eve, of course. And so they rewrite religious history every chance they get to proclaim that they are the original religion and that Christians and Jews are apostates from Islam.
And then, of course, out of that memorandum, the explanatory memorandum, that was really, it's a federal government document in the Department of Justice now. Anybody can look this up online at probably the Center for Security Policy hosts it as well.
Yes.
This is where the Council on American Islamic Relations was an unindicted co-conspirator, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And
the other thing that happened too in 1989, which goes back a ways, and I should mention this because this woman is misidentified as being Tlaib, the congresswoman from Michigan. This woman's name is Sharifa Al-Khatib, and she actually is deceased. She died in about 2004. But she was giving a speech at a Muslim conference, Muslim Americans Political Awareness Conference in 1989. And she was advocating for the infiltration of our educational system, that she emphasized that we are not Americans, we don't want to be Americans, we are Muslims, and we're going to convert all the Americans to be Muslims as well. And we're going to do it through the educational system. And that's exactly what they've been doing for the last 30 plus years. So
they've been extremely successful in Minnesota, particularly. Seems that we are ripe for that kind of thing. You mentioned this explanatory memorandum, and I'm curious about the common word exchanges that I put that in inverted quotes, the common word. How are they significant to interfaith dialogues in that they look for these common denominators or common words? What is that all about?
Well, the common word document was actually initiated again by Muslims, of which at least a third or more were radical Muslim Brotherhood members from around the country and around the world, actually. And they publicized in the New York Times back in 2005, I believe it was. 2007. And they basically addressed the Christian community and said, look, we all have a common word. We all stand on a common ground. We worship the same God, and we're all Abrahamic faith. Let us come together in peaceful dialogue and share our commonality. Well, Christian pastors and Christian scholars and Christian seminary leaders and university leaders all jumped on that. And initially 350 of these, quote, Christian leaders signed on to that and affirmed that yes, we all worship the same God, and yes, we all have a commonality and a common ground on which we can stand, so let us come together. Well, this basically was the initiation of the Chrislamite concept. where Christianity and Islam can come together in unity, and because we all worship the same God and stand on the same Abrahamic foundation and heritage, which is all a lie and deception of the devil. I mean, it comes from Islam, but the devil is using Islam to deceive Christian leaders, and they've fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. And I address that in my, not only in my book Embracing the Antichrist, but I address it in the other book as well, the compendium Understanding Islam in the Light of Christianity.
Mhm. Yeah, it's astonishing the degree to which Islam has met with incredible successes to the extent that some Methodist churches or Lutheran churches will display um, Blessed Ramadan posters during the Ramadan season, and actually they don't realize that they're commemorating the Battle of Badr, in which hundreds and hundreds of Jews and Christians were massacred.
Exactly.
So, Blessed Ramadan, ironic. Um, what is the goal of interfaith dialogue from a Christian
Breaking up there.
perspective?